You are standing in a room in December 2020, watching a number on a screen. It's climbing. Not slowly, doubling. In real time, in front of a few hundred people who are all watching the same number you are. Your company just went public. By the time the market closes today, it will be worth more than every major hotel chain in America combined. Somewhere in the back of your mind, a memory surfaces that doesn't belong in a room like this. An air mattress. A landlord's letter you couldn't afford to answer. You weren't supposed to be here. Nobody thought you would be. Let's go back to the part where nobody believed you, including, some days, you. Level 1. The kid who couldn't stop noticing. 1981. Your parents are social workers, both of them, which means your childhood is quietly shaped by a fact most kids never think about. That some people have nowhere safe to go, and somebody has to be the one who shows up for them. You don't know it yet, but that fact is going to become the whole business. You're not the kid who's good at math. You're the kid who's always building something, sculptures, drawings, whatever's in reach, taking things apart just to understand why they were built the way they were. You've already figured out something most adults haven't. Small, boring effort repeated every day beats talent that only shows up when it feels like it. At the Rhode Island School of Design, you study industrial design, and you develop a habit that will follow you for the rest of your life, looking at an ordinary object and asking why it has to be this uncomfortable, this ugly, this hard to use. Late one night in the studio, you meet a classmate named Joe Gebbia. Fast-talking, relentless, the only other person still working past midnight. Neither of you has any idea that this friendship is going to be worth billions of dollars one day. You just know you like the way he thinks. You graduate with a design degree. No job offer waiting. No safety net. Just a brain that's been trained, for 4 years, to notice discomfort everyone else has learned to ignore. Level 2. The rent you couldn't cover. You move to San Francisco chasing a design job that barely pays. Joe's already there, freelancing, just as broke as you are. You move in as his roommate. For a while it works barely. Then the rent goes up. Neither of you has the extra few $100s. Neither of you wants to call home and ask. So you sit with the problem instead of running from it. And that turns out to be the most important decision either of you makes that year. The same week, a design conference floods into San Francisco, and every hotel sells out. Hundreds of people with nowhere to sleep. You look at your empty living room. You look at 3 air mattresses stuffed in the closet, and you ask each other a question that feels almost stupid to say out loud. What if people paid us to sleep on our floor? You build a website in a weekend. Air bed and breakfast. You can't afford a designer, so you design the logo yourselves. 3 strangers show up with suitcases and $80 each. You cook them breakfast, because the name promised breakfast. And standing at the stove, you notice something you weren't expecting to notice. These people don't just want a mattress. They want to feel like they belong somewhere, in a city where they don't know a single person. It covers the rent. That's all it was supposed to do. But it doesn't leave your head. Level 3. 15 no's. You bring in a third friend, an engineer named Nathan Blacharczyk, and the 3 of you spend the next year trying to turn a weekend fix into an actual company. You rebuild the site. You sharpen the pitch. You start walking into rooms full of people who cannot picture, for the life of them, why a stranger would ever sleep in someone else's home. 15 investors hear you out. 8 say no to your face. 7 don't even write back. You're maxing out credit cards to keep the lights on, and every single rejection chips away at the part of you that still believes in this. So you do something almost nobody in your position would try. During the 2008 election, you design limited edition cereal boxes Obama owes, Cap and McCain's, and sell them for $40 a box, just to keep the lights on one more month. It sounds like a stunt. It raises $30,000. And it catches the eye of a man named Paul Graham, who runs a startup accelerator called Y Combinator. He looks at 3 broke founders selling novelty cereal instead of quitting. And he tells you something you'll repeat to yourself for the rest of your life. If you can talk someone into paying $40 for a $4 box of cereal, maybe you can talk a stranger into letting another stranger sleep in their home. Level 4. The Cockroaches, Winter 2009. Paul Graham lets you into Y Combinator $20,000 for 6% of a company most people still think is a joke about air mattresses. He calls you and your co-founders cockroaches. He means it as the highest compliment he has. Cockroaches don't die easily. Neither do you. In that program, you learn the rule that shapes everything that comes after. 100 customers who love what you built beats 1,000,000 who only sort of like it. You stop trying to be big. You start obsessing over every single person who trusts you enough to book a night in a stranger's home. A month later, Sequoia Capital writes you a check for $600,000. The first real money from anyone with real credibility. All those nights spent figuring out rent. All those doors that shut in your face. Suddenly, none of it was wasted. The name changes. Airbed and breakfast becomes something shorter. something that will eventually sit on the side of buildings. Airbnb. Level 5. Every photograph. Every stranger. The years that follow aren't about scale. They're about trust, one listing at a time. You personally photograph early rentals yourself because you've realized a blurry, ugly photo is the difference between a booking and a stranger scrolling past. The only question you're chasing, over and over, is what makes someone feel safe walking into a house that isn't theirs? By 2011, the company is worth over $1 billion, a number that would have sounded like a joke to the 15 people who once turned you down without blinking. You expand into tree houses, castles, apartments in towns nobody had ever thought to visit. By 2014, 10 billion. By 2017, past 30 billion. Built on the idea that people don't just want a bed. They want to belong somewhere, even for one night, and a stranger's bookshelf can feel more like home than any hotel room ever built. Level 6, 8 weeks, early 2020. 13 years of work collapses in 8 weeks. A pandemic shuts down travel across the entire planet. Airbnb loses roughly 80% of its revenue almost overnight. The bookings just stop. You lay off a quarter of your company, nearly 1,900 people, whose only income was the thing you built out of a spare room. You don't send a spokesperson to deliver the news. You write the letter yourself, because you learned as a kid, watching your parents come home every night, that hard truths belong to the person who means them. Most founders shrink here, wait for the world to go back to normal. You don't. You bet that people will still want to travel just differently. Closer to home, longer stays, space instead of sightseeing. You strip the company back down to the exact instinct that built it, and you rebuild around it. It works. Within months, the company that was bleeding out is climbing again, faster than anyone inside it expected. Level 7. The room you're standing in, which brings you back to that room. December 2020. The number on the screen, still climbing. The stock doubles by the end of the day. The company is worth more than $100 billion more than the hotel chains and airlines that never once had to sleep on an air mattress to make rent. You are the kid who once slept on the floor of his own living room because there was nowhere else. And now you are watching a company, built on that exact floor, become one of the most valuable travel businesses on the planet. But here's the part that doesn't show up on the screen. You were never chasing this number. You were chasing the same feeling you had the first night 3 strangers walked through your door and paid $80 to sleep on an air mattress, the feeling of being welcomed somewhere you didn't expect to belong. You never set out to build the largest hospitality company on earth. You set out to solve the problem sitting in your own living room, not enough money for rent, and a spare mattress nobody was using. And somewhere between that air mattress and a stock that doubled on its first day of trading, that's exactly what you built. So here's the question worth sitting with. What's the idea you've already talked yourself out of the one that might actually be worth trying? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to keep going, there's another billionaire's beginning waiting for you.